I'm John Hagelin, National Director of the Maharishi Foundation, responsible for teaching Transcendental Meditation throughout the United States. I'm very excited to share with you today some of the breakthroughs in the development of knowledge in the fields of physics and cosmology and brain science, which really are providing a profound foundation for the complete transformation of civilization in our lifetimes, and hopefully a lot sooner than that. What I wanted to share today was some of the knowledge that is emerging in our understanding of the universe from physics, from inflationary cosmology, quantum mechanics, and brain science that are really showing some very, very deep new understandings about human potential and its capability to transform not only individual life, but the whole society in which we live. I'm going to be offering a course that I normally teach each year at Maharishi University of Management in Iowa. I'm going to be presenting that course online in a self-paced course, so hopefully as many people who are interested in these developments in physics and cosmology and brain science can take the course as possible, self-paced, at home, and at one's convenience. I have taught this course, believe it or not, for 30 years now, but the course is different every year because we keep discovering new things about the universe, new things about the human brain, about the limits of human potential. And so the course is a very dynamic one that evolves rapidly year after year. This course, which is called Foundations of Physics and Consciousness, Quantum Field Theory, Superstring Theory, Inflationary Cosmology, and Higher States of Consciousness, is being taught now online for anyone to take at home, at their convenience, in their own pace, either for college credit or just for the sheer joy of this exciting, groundbreaking knowledge. For those who elect to take this course for credit, it'll still be completely self-paced and at one's convenience, but then there are a few quizzes and gradings that are done to help assess, basically, how well one is assimilating the material. I'm going to give a little bit of a tour of this course right now because I think this knowledge has universal application. I think it is of universal interest to anyone who wants to understand how the universe works, where the universe comes from, the story of cosmology, the birth and evolution of the universe, the nature of human consciousness and higher states of consciousness, and how this practically affects human life of the individual and society. So this course, which has been a very popular university course so far, is going to be offered now, starting this month, starting in February, online for anybody who'd like to take it anywhere. And I'll tell you in a few minutes how you can access that course. First of all, let me just give a quick tour. The course begins with a quick overview of where we sit in our universe. What is our local neighborhood? We give a quick tour here of the sun and the planets, which are shown in this graph in relative size, although the distance scale has certainly been squeezed. The planets are not that close to the sun, but this is their size relative to the sun. Pluto, you may know, has been recently demoted as a planet, and so now there are just 8 planets, including the Earth, starting with sun-baked Mercury, shown here, which is quite inhospitable, hot enough to melt lead on the sunny side of Mercury, followed by Venus, next closest planet to the sun, which is a shimmering jewel, the brightest of the stars at night. And when you look at it more closely, it's not quite as hospitable and beautiful as it may seem from a distance. And then after Venus comes Earth, which is an absolute jewel of a planet, one that we are all, of course, very attached to. And moving away from the sun, we have Mars, with its frozen ice caps. This is frozen dry ice, not just frozen water, frozen carbon dioxide. It's quite cold by the time you're that far from the sun. And then here's Jupiter with its moons, as was seen in the very first telescope of Galileo's, who discovered that this is not a star but a planet with its own moons that is orbiting about the sun. And the discovery that there are planets other than the Earth changed the whole view of the universe, which had been an Earth-centered universe, to a sun-centered universe. And this next chart shows Jupiter as it is seen by modern telescopes today, with its incredible magnetic storm or spot that's changing on a daily basis. Next out from the sun, and now we are about 500 million miles away, is Saturn, which is an incredible thing to behold in the sky, even with a backyard telescope. Even a powerful set of binoculars is an extraordinary planet to see. Moving out from there is Uranus, and this is the relative size of Uranus next to the Earth. And then Neptune, which is so far by now from the sun, over 1 billion miles away, that the sun is that very faint dot, that glowing dot in the background. So it's always very dim and very cold. And finally, Pluto, which, as I said, was demoted from its planetary status. Now, once you get outside of our solar system, things get very interesting. This is a picture of what's called the Crab Nebula. And the Crab Nebula is the result, the remnants of an exploded star, a star that went supernova. And that star became a neutron star, which is whipping around and rotating at high velocity with powerful magnetic fields, which are whipping the nearby gas, hydrogen and helium mostly, into a very high state of excitation, which glows, giving the colors that you see in this picture. We'll understand what a supernova is after studying this course and what the evolution of stars are. The next chart shows our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, which is like an island universe unto itself. Our galaxy has about 300 to 400 billion stars, 300 to 400 billion suns, of which our sun is one, the location of which is indicated here, which is about 2/3 of the way out towards the edge of our galaxy. This is the galaxy seen from above. Our galaxy has a pancake shape. We can see that across the sky. As we look across the sky, that milky band, we call it the Milky Way. It's not milk, actually. That light patch in the sky are really billions of individual stars, which even through binoculars you'll see is not milkiness, but just tiny, tiny pinpricks of light. Millions upon billions of stars. If we look outside our Milky Way, take your telescope and turn it outside of that milky patch of the Milky Way, and you're no longer looking at so many billions of stars. You're looking more out into space. And when you look out into space, you'll see, for example, other galaxies, beginning with our sister galaxy shown here, the Andromeda galaxy. Now we're 2 million light years away, and a light year is about 6 trillion miles. And our sister galaxy, the Andromeda, is very much like our own galaxy. But if we look, beyond the Andromeda galaxy out into space, you'll start to see more and more galaxies and clusters of galaxies. In fact, as you look out with a good telescope into space, you will see, as this next chart suggests, more galaxies than stars. Again, each of these galaxies is like an island universe with hundreds of billions of suns. So we'll create a little bit of a perspective of where we stand in the universe at the beginning of the course, but very quickly we start to look within. Instead of examining outer space, the greatest scientific discoveries have come in the last 20 to 25 years through the exploration of inner space. That means looking at smaller and smaller distances, not greater and greater distances, looking at the molecule and atom and the nucleus and subnuclear particles. This next chart shows really the inward structure of the universe, starting with macroscopic diversity at the top of the chart and fundamental unity at the bottom of this chart. This chart shows at the very foundation of the universe, at sub-microscopic scales, the discovery of what is called the unified field, or superstring field. This field gives rise to the diversified laws of nature that govern the universe. See, modern physics has been exploring deeper and deeper levels of reality, from the nucleus to the subnuclear levels, the electroweak unified level, which the Nobel Prizes have been recently awarded. Electroweak unification is discovering that 2 of the 4 forces of nature are ultimately one. If you look much deeper than the nucleus, the diversity of 4 forces simplifies to only 3 forces. And if you look about 1,000 million times smaller than that, you'll see that 3 of the 4 forces of nature have become one. And then finally, 10,000 times smaller than that is the foundation of the universe, the origin of space and time itself. This is the so-called super-unified scale, the so-called Planck scale, where all the forces of nature unite, and all the particles of nature also unite into one unified field, one universal field of energy and intelligence at the foundation of the universe, at the point value of creation, deep within the core of everything. This unified field theory, which was Einstein's name, commonly called superstring theory today, is a theory about this fundamental nature of reality, the fundamental intelligence at the origin of the universe, from which all the elementary particles emerge. And when they emerge, we know today, they don't really look like particles. If anything, they look like strings, miniature rubber bands. And these rubber bands vibrate as rubber bands do. And depending upon how a given rubber band is vibrating, that rubber band may look like a quark, a graviton, a photon, an electron. Superstring theory is about a universal field that percolates strings, little rubber bands. And these rubber bands look like particles from a distance because the rubber bands are so small, 10 to the minus 33 centimeters. But depending upon how a particular rubber band is vibrating vibrating to the left? Is it vibrating to the right? Is it vibrating like this? Is it vibrating like this? There are just so many ways a rubber band can vibrate. These rubber bands, these superstrings, happen to live in 10 space-time dimensions. And so do we, even though it doesn't look like it. But superstring theory explains all of that, and it shows how this universal field of intelligence at the basis of the universe and governing the universe percolates superstrings. And these strings vibrate in different ways, so that one may look like an electron, another like a graviton. In this way, today, we can explain in mathematical detail all the elementary particles and forces of nature in a single unified theory, fulfilling Einstein's lifelong dream to discover the unified source at the basis of the diversified universe. It's very, very exciting, and I can't begin to go into it right here, right now, but in the course of this course that I'm explaining and offering, all of this will be easily understood in a series of 18 lessons taken at one's own convenience on one's own computer from one's own home. But just to kind of give you a feeling for it, as this next chart shows, this unified field is like a bubbling cauldron shimmering within itself, a cauldron that percolates particles and forces in the form of superstrings. And indeed, as we'll see in a few minutes, percolates entire universes, of which we live in one. The next chart shows that these superstring theories live in higher dimensional spaces. That means in addition to the 3 dimensions of space and the dimension of time that we know and love, there are also extra hidden dimensions, which have an extraordinary structure, as is glimpsed in the following chart, which attempts to show the geometric structure of the extra 6 dimensions of space that we know exist today on the basis of superstring theory. We'll talk a little bit about these extra dimensions and what good they are. We're also going to talk about the incredible machines paid for by our tax dollars, in part, like CERN. CERN, in the new LHC, Large Hadron Collider at CERN, is a colossal particle accelerator, 27 kilometers in circumference, as shown here. It encircles Geneva, goes into nearby France. And in this huge underground tunnel, as shown in the next diagram, is an enormous array of superconducting magnets that are held to within a degree or so above absolute zero. Powerful superconducting magnets needed to bend protons into a huge circle, otherwise they would fly off straight forever, because these protons are traveling at have been accelerated to 99.99999, the speed of light. Now, when these protons, one traveling clockwise and another beam of protons traveling counterclockwise, collide at certain prescribed collision points, then detectors, shown in the next chart, gigantic detectors, are designed to be able to trace the debris of these collisions and all the thousands of particles that are created by the slamming together of two ultra-high energy protons. And in the process of these collisions, new particles are being sought. And we sift through all the data and all the debris and all the particle tracks, and we can deduce that this is the new Higgs boson, the so-called God particle that gives all the particles in the universe their mass. That has not yet been seen. We know pretty much everything about it, and we are looking forward to seeing it within the next couple of years at this incredible new machine. And more interesting and exciting particles, also called supersymmetric particles, as well as possibly micro black holes, and all the amazing things that these particle accelerators hope to see. We'll talk about that. Then we're going to actually turn a little bit to the study of relativity and gravity theory, beginning with a study of black holes. Black holes are an incredibly fascinating laboratory to really understand what gravity is. And we need to understand what gravity is if we're going to figure out how to unify gravity with the other three forces. So here's a picture of a black hole in the process of swallowing a nearby star. And indeed, another picture that shows the same thing. Many black holes live in orbit about other stars and are usually drinking the outer gaseous envelopes of these other stars, creating such a superheating of the gas in the process of being swallowed by the black hole that they heat up so much they radiate X-rays. And these X-rays are measurable, seen on Earth today. Anyway, black holes are really fascinating. We'll talk about those. And none of this, by the way, requires any math. Not a single equation is necessary to understand all of this, although I will show an equation or two, for interest's sake, when that may be helpful. Finally, the purpose of all this, really, is to relate this experience of outer reality, the experience of physical reality brought to light by the latest discoveries of science and cosmology, bring these to light in the light of human consciousness. It would be difficult normally to teach material like this to non-graduate students in physics, to people who are not in college at all, perhaps have never been to college even, without being able to draw upon our own experience of consciousness through our transcendental meditation practice. Experience of the mind settling down, going within, gives us more and more familiarity with the structure of human intelligence, structure of human consciousness. And this next chart shows, and this is really fundamental, the relationship between human intelligence and the intelligence of nature. What this chart shows is the structure of the physical universe on the left, which we've seen before, which shows that the universe is structured in layers of creation, from superficially diverse to fundamentally unified, from superficially concrete to the subtlest, most abstract field of unity at the foundation of the concrete universe. But this chart also shows on the right-hand side the relationship to consciousness and meditation. Transcendental meditation, properly understood, properly practiced, is a technique to take the normally outwardly directed attention and turn our awareness within, withdrawing the awareness from our outwardly directed senses and to begin to explore and experience quieter levels of thought, subtler, more abstract levels of human intelligence. And as this chart shows, subtler levels of human intelligence correspond to, or this inward exploration of consciousness corresponds to, the experience and exploration of deeper levels of intelligence of nature. When the mind is being drawn in to experience subtler levels of human intelligence, it is really traversing the field of subtler levels of intelligence in nature until the awareness transcends. At the bottom of this chart, at the deepest level of thought, Human awareness merges with this unified field of intelligence at the basis of mind and matter. Human awareness, through the course of meditation, gets withdrawn from the narrow boundaries of experience, begins to relax and expand, to become unbounded, abstract, unbounded ocean of being, ocean of abstract bliss. And that maximally expanded state of human awareness, transcendental consciousness, pure consciousness, is a fourth state of consciousness, different from waking, dreaming, or sleeping. In the meditative state, pure consciousness, human awareness identifies with cosmic awareness. Human awareness, human intelligence expands to experience universal awareness, universal intelligence. That's the direct experience of the unified field sought by Einstein and confirmed by modern physics today. That relationship between human intelligence and our daily experience of meditation with the intelligence governing the universe makes all this material very, very easy and intuitive. I promise, having taught this course for 30 years, nobody won't get this stuff, and no mathematics is required. We will be exploring in this process consciousness and higher states of consciousness, enlightenment. Cosmic consciousness is the word that is often used in our course of instruction in transcendental meditation, but there are higher states of consciousness even beyond mere enlightenment, even beyond mere liberation, traditionally called God consciousness and unity consciousness. These states of consciousness will be explored and discussed. And very interestingly, this widespread understanding, at least by many, that thought has power, that intentionality has power, that in a sense our thoughts crystallize our reality and fulfill our desires for us. That understanding we discuss, and we talk about the different levels of mind, the power of thought. Does it have any power? If so, how much power? Why that seems to differ for different people. There's this movie called The Secret, and before that, a book called The Power of Positive Thinking, and on and on and on throughout time, people have talked about the power of thought. Thought seems to have a certain amount of manifesting power, but for some people, it seems to work better than others. Some people have a lot of luck. What is the difference? How can we develop our power of thought? How can we fulfill our desires more effectively? We will understand that in detail in this course, and it's very, very practical knowledge. Finally, the course goes into the area that I haven't talked much about yet, and that is cosmology, the birth of the universe. And there's some absolutely incredible breakthroughs here. This Big Bang, as it's called, cosmology, and inflationary cosmology, which is the latest iteration, is fascinating. It begins with the universe. You could say it begins before the universe, with this unified field, abstract field of pure existence, pure being. And that field of pure existence, as we've described it, is like this bubbling, shimmering ocean of pure creativity, ocean of intelligence, shimmering, reverberating within itself. And it's this ocean, this unified field, through its incredible dynamism, that percolates superstrings and gives rise to the particles and forces of nature. But more than that, it percolates whole universes. Our universe, and possibly an infinity of others, have emerged from that universal ocean of intelligence, as this chart shows. This chart shows a universe bubbling up from this ocean of pure existence, the unified field. And these bubbles sometimes expand rapidly to become universes. That's called inflation, the inflationary cosmos. We'll understand exactly why that happens. But in any case, we have this ocean of being, unified field of universal intelligence, universal consciousness, percolating universes like ginger ale percolates effervescent bubbles. And this next chart, which is a very poetic drawing from the ancient Vedic literature, shows this same concept of this universal ocean of being, ocean of intelligence, represented in this picture as Lord Narayana, bubbling an infinity of universes, as if thought bubbles. And amazingly, that's very much what physics tells us today. What causes the universe to expand? What causes the inflation to take place, where a microscopic bubble universe becomes an enormous universe of today? That's called inflation. We'll understand that too. In Einstein's equations, I said you don't have to understand any math, but occasionally I'll show you and explain an equation. In this Einstein's equation, it shows how g mu nu, that's the expansion of space, is driven by matter, if there is any, but there really isn't in the very early universe, and something else called dark energy, quintessence, vacuum energy, zero-point motion, Zitterbewegung. What are the many names are given to this, but it's the fluctuations of the unified field, the dynamism of the unified field is abounding with energy. And that energy is of an expansionary nature. And that energy of the field of consciousness is what fuels the emergence and expansion of the universe. You know, consciousness is a lively thing. Our consciousness is not dead. It's not inert. It's alive. It's vital. That's what makes experience a living experience. What is that liveliness of consciousness within? That liveliness of consciousness is the fluctuating nature, the vibrant, shimmering nature of consciousness. It's that shimmering nature of consciousness that makes consciousness conscious, lively. And it's that very same liveliness of universal consciousness that propels the emergence of the universe. And Einstein's equations actually tell us that. So take a look at the next chart. This shows the inflationary cosmos, which just shows an initial burst of expansion at the left, followed by a more normal phase of expansion, which we are in today. But the key to this is, as the next chart shows, the universe emerges from these vibrations of consciousness, so-called fluctuations of emptiness, vacuum fluctuations, vacuum energy. That vacuum energy in this chart is shown on the top left in these blue and red waves. Those are the fluctuations of the unified field. Those waves have a very definite structure, a calculable structure. We know the structure of the vibrations of the unified field, the vibrations of consciousness. When the universe emerges from those vibrations, it has a very definite shape and structure. The structure of the emergent universe mirrors the structure of the unmanifest fluctuations from which it came. So if you look carefully at the same chart, you'll see on the top left, the fluctuations of the vacuum, pure being, pure emptiness from which the universe comes. And emerging from that, we see this universe emerging towards the bottom right. And what you have in the early universe is basically a universe of radiation. Leftover radiation from the Big Bang. Leftover heat from the Big Bang in the form of electromagnetic radiation. That radiation is mostly uniform, the same everywhere throughout space, but with tiny variations, tiny fluctuations. And those fluctuations, supposedly, according to theory, should mirror the structure of consciousness itself, should mirror the fluctuations of the unified field from which they came. So, again, our tax dollars at work. The next slide shows the Wilkinson Microwave Anisotropy Probe, a satellite we've sent out into a distant Earth orbit to actually measure the radiation left over from the Big Bang. Microwaves left over from the Big Bang. And we have mapped out in detail now the structure of the microwaves left over from the Big Bang. We've mapped the entire sky. And when you map the entire sky, you get an actual measurement of the radiation left over from the Big Bang that we see out there today. And you see little yellow and red areas where the temperature is a little bit hotter, and you see cooler blue areas where the temperature is a little bit cooler. But there's a definite pattern there. A little bit warmer, a little bit cooler, a little warmer, a little bit cooler. And that pattern does, in fact, match exactly the unmanifest structure of consciousness, the structure of the unified field reverberating within itself, from which the universe emerged. Okay, between you and me, radiation's just a little bit boring. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. But in addition to the radiation out there, there are more interesting things. There are planets and stars and galaxies, and they have a definite distribution as well. So the next chart shows that we have this universe, which is mostly radiation, in the middle, which is an exact mirror of the unified field from which it came on the top left. But on the bottom right, we see, emerging from the universe of radiation is today's universe, which is mostly matter. The original radiation is peppered with tiny amounts of matter, protons and neutrons and electrons. Over time, those particles start to gravitationally clump into lumps called stars and bigger lumps called galaxies. So you have this initial distribution, a sprinkling of protons and neutrons, which have the same structure as the radiation. But over time, those faint fluctuations of radiation get exaggerated in the matter because matter clumps gravitationally. Radiation does not clump gravitationally. You can't slow radiation down. It's always flying across the universe. But the particles start to gravitationally clump into lumps, creating an increasingly lumpy universe, which we observe as a universe of stars and a universe of planets and galaxies. So today, if the theory is correct, the distribution of planets, stars, galaxies throughout the heavens should also reflect the original structure of the radiation, which is also an exact mirror of the original fluctuations of emptiness, the original structure of consciousness, the fluctuations of the unified field. It all came from there. So the matter should mirror the structure of the unified field as well, even though it becomes lumpier, clumpier, and more exaggerated. And this next chart shows the structure of our universe today. The structure, the spread of galaxies and clusters of galaxies throughout the universe. Now you can barely see this because it's such an incredible web, but you can see there's some structure there. And every tiny, invisibly small pinprick of red in this figure represents a cluster of galaxies, each galaxy with hundreds of billions of suns. Let's zoom in on this a little bit so that we can see it a little more clearly. This is our more or less local universe, about 1 billion light years across. Even here we see this web of clusters of galaxies, including our so-called local group in the middle, a dot of red too small to see in this picture, which is our Milky Way galaxy, and the Andromeda galaxy, and the suburbs, the so-called Magellanic Clouds. But nevertheless, what you see is a distribution, a very definite shape or distribution of galaxies across the heavens. The theory is that should mimic the unified field and the fluctuations, the structure of the unified field from which it came. And it does, precisely. This is a spectacular success of inflationary cosmology. Inflationary cosmology predicts that the large-scale structure of the universe should mirror the submicroscopic structure of the unified field, the fluctuations of the vacuum, made manifest, because the whole universe came from there. And that is exactly the case. And this really brings some beautiful historic expressions from the Vedic literature, really from every major philosophical and spiritual tradition on earth. Quotes like this one from the Upanishad, Anuranayan Mahato Mahayan, which means that which is smaller than the smaller is also bigger than the biggest. Or, as is the atom, so is the universe. What does that mean? What is smaller than the smallest? The unified field, the submicroscopic structure of the fluctuations of emptiness, vacuum fluctuations. What is bigger than the biggest? The large-scale structure of galaxies across the heavens. Those two structures are identical because one emerges from the other. Or this other expression from the Upanishads as well, tad dure tad antike. That which is far away is experienced within. What is far away? Large-scale structure of the universe, the spread of galaxies across the heavens. What is that which is deep within? Structure of consciousness, the liveliness of consciousness, which when experienced clearly and deeply during TM, is experienced as a structure of fluctuations of consciousness, which actually can be heard as sounds, originally just a big hum, almost as though the silence within is roaring. But when you start to dive into the structure, the nature of that hum, you start to pick out certain sounds. And those sounds, by the way, are the so-called sounds of the Veda, a structure of consciousness at the basis of the universe. Next chart, and one of the final, shows something fascinating. Having studied this relationship now between the macroscopic and the microscopic, between cosmology and particle physics, let's take a look at what the universe is made of today. When we look at the universe today, we see that only 4.6% of the universe is matter. That means stars and galaxies and planets, protons, neutrons, electrons. 23% of the universe is so-called dark matter. Dark matter is a little mysterious, not all that mysterious, and we'll talk about what that is during the course, but most of the universe is dark matter, and there's evidence for dark matter today, very clear evidence on the scale of galaxies. But more interesting than that, 72% of the universe, almost 3/4, is so-called dark energy, vacuum energy, zero-point motion, quintessence, etc. That means the fluctuations of consciousness, or the fluctuations of the unified field, unmanifest fluctuations at the basis of creation, while unmanifest, while unobservable. Those fluctuations really dominate the energy of the universe. The universe is dominated by this unmanifest fluctuations of the unified field. And because of that, and because these fluctuations of the unified field, this dark energy is expansionary in nature, we expect to see, and we have seen, that our universe today is not only expanding, which you would expect because a certain momentum from the Big Bang is still there, but we now believe that it's not going to turn around as was previously thought and then collapse to a point. It seems as though the acceleration of the universe today is actually accelerating. The universe is accelerating in its expansion. That expansion is being driven by these fluctuations of the unmanifest, vacuum fluctuations, which is the liveliness of our own consciousness, driving the universe into a state of perhaps eternal expansion, causing eventually what's called the Big Rip, where everything gets torn apart from each other due to the incredible and accelerating expansion of the universe. Even our molecules and atoms and quarks torn apart. So that's a very different future of the universe than the one we had anticipated even a few years ago, which was the Big Crunch scenario, where the universe stopped expanding and then recollapsed to a crunch. All this seems a little theoretical, but it has very practical implications. It has direct implications about the nature of human consciousness, the nature of human potential. And we'll review in this course the research on the brain and brain development that comes as a result of meditation. We'll be able to understand a lot of previously mysterious things. For example, as this next chart shows, field effects of consciousness, the power of group meditation, to reduce stress throughout a whole society, to reduce crime and social violence, terrorism and war, which has been shown now in abundant and very rigorous scientific research published in the world's foremost journals, that when there are enough people meditating and experiencing the transcendent together, stimulating the unified field together, waves of coherence, waves of positivity, waves of harmony sweep through society. Stress is reduced. Orderliness of brain functioning increases throughout society measurably. How does this work? How does a group or even an individual influence another individual at a distance? How could a group in Iowa, for example, reduce crime in New York City and throughout the United States? We know that today. Physics can explain that today. So there's some really fascinating things, even what are traditionally called supernormal abilities, understood and understandable now through physics. So for example, in this course, we will review very briefly the very impressive research on lower crime, terrorism, and war in the vicinity of meditating groups, diffusing the incredible stress and religious and political and ethnic tensions that fuel violence and conflict, and by diffusing stress, reducing violence. And we'll understand, as this chart shows, some of the remarkable new mechanisms that help us understand how one person or a group can influence others at a distance, including quantum teleportation, including space-time wormholes, including the long-range collapse of the wave function and what's called quantum entanglement, and so forth. These mechanisms are very interesting and well understood today, so we're going to be using this knowledge to understand practical things about how to develop the brain, how to transform society. So I just wanted to let you know, all of us know, that this course, which has been developed over and improved and refined over 3 decades, is going to be available everywhere in the world starting immediately through this online course, Foundations of Physics of Consciousness, that I will personally teach. It's my great joy to do that. I love the administration of the teaching of Transcendental Meditation. It really gives my life incredible purpose to bring this kind of relief, this kind of health benefit, this kind of brain development to thousands and thousands of people every single month. But I love the knowledge. I love the deep principles that are transforming society today and that are bringing us inevitably to a very much transformed world. And I want to share some of those deep principles with my friends and colleagues and fellow meditators. That's what this course is for. So there are 2 things. I would really encourage you, if you have an interest in these fundamental issues, to tune into this course, to enroll in this course, whether for credit, if you need college credit, or just for the joy of learning, if you want to take it in a little bit more casual way. Visit the website mum.edu/DE. That means distance education. It's mum.edu/DE, as shown here, and get a better exposure to this course. And if you're interested, certainly enroll in the course. I would love the opportunity to be invited into your living room on your computer and to be with you. And we'll have a lot of live Q&A as well via internet, using the internet technology throughout this course. It's 18 lessons. It is completely self-paced. You may want to do a lesson a week, maybe even 2. You might want to pace it out more slowly, completely up to you. I hope this material sparks your interest. If it doesn't, I certainly won't take any offense. But I have found in the past, when people understand the deep principles of meditation, and these principles that are really in the process of transforming life on earth, and inevitably will, their own understanding and experience of their meditation gets deeper. And that's ultimately what all this is about. So take a look at mum.edu/DE. If you're interested, sign up for the course. Thank you for being with me on this quick call today, and I look forward to talking with many of you again soon. And for those of you who choose to tune in to some of this knowledge about the universe and higher states of consciousness, I'll be spending quite a bit of time with you. Thank you so much.